in this whole discussion about the debt ceiling of the default crisis that we're facing right now in this country, what has been on the table has been programs that are essential to working folk in the middle class and to those populations in our country that need the support. What has not been on the table is the items that our budget, that we submitted, people's budget, had as revenue generators, essential revenue generators. The tax cuts for the rich, repealing those, the loopholes, the subsidies, and a whole list of areas that we felt needed to be part of revenue generation before we started talking about cutting our way out of this situation, which we can't. We feel that the discussions have been skewed up to this point. The discussions have dealt with a very narrow area of budget priorities and have not included the whole spectrum that needs to be on the table. The Republicans wrote a check in the 2011 budget. They continue to write checks on Ryan's 2012, checks that have created an additional $4 trillion in deficit for this country, and checks they can't cash. And now they're asking the American people, they're asking Democrats, they're asking this administration to help them cash those checks. And we're saying if we got into the situation with those kinds of policies, then it's incumbent upon the president as he negotiates to put what I believe to be the real priorities on the table for budget reduction. And by doing so, I think garner the support of the American people that are waiting for an alternative to the very skewed and narrow discussions that are going on regarding the budget and regarding the debt ceiling.
Those on the other side of the aisle believe that cutting benefits to seniors is the only way we can solve our default crisis, but I say that there are other ways. And let me focus on the Medicaid issue. The average American senior's income is only $19,000 a year. Seniors rely on Medicaid to help pay for necessities. They need it to live in their community or to afford a nursing home. In fact, a huge 43% of money spent on nursing care in the U.S. comes from Medicaid. By cutting this critical program, nursing home care costs will increase for millions of families. At a time when each millionaire is getting a $138,700 tax break a year from the government, there is no reason our seniors and the neediest amongst us need to struggle to pay their hospital bills. The debt must be addressed, but it should be done in a way that is fair to all.
Republicans say that they're willing to put revenue on the table as long as those are matched with reductions in rates. Do you think that's a good faith argument or bargaining chip, or is that not what's good? So that it's revenue neutral in the end?
Well, I think that I think it's a bargaining chip indeed, but is it a fair bargaining chip? The point that I think we're making is that those three essential programs and no investment in other areas need to be protected. And with regard to Social Security, you know, we've said it all along. The caucus said you eliminate the individual Social Security payroll cap, that is going to enhance the security of the fund. You increase benefits based on higher contributions on the employee side. That is going to stabilize Social Security. There are things we can do to enhance and stabilize those programs, Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. But to sustain cuts with them and as a mechanism for revenue neutral process, I still don't think that side of the ledger is fair. For Boehner to be able to, but then again, you know, I'm watching cable news, so that it was that couldn't lose more than 50 on that side of the aisle to be able to pass a deal that he would endorse. Given that equation, I think Democrats in the House, particularly on these three essential programs, I think we do have more leverage than people anticipate. Because if it is a negotiated deal that involves cuts to Social Security, changes to Social Security, there's going to be considerable resistance within our caucus. And as such, without overwhelming support from our caucus, I think it's going to be a hard deal to pass. If a deal involves the cuts to Medicare, Social Security, a dismantling of Medicaid, that the political consequences, all negative, would befall both parties. And I think this is why it's important that the American people, regardless of party affiliation, get a clear message that there are a significant number of elected officials, in this instance Democrats, who brought up this issue, that are willing to fight and support those essential programs, because I think that is the political reality. But I think the negative consequences would befall all.
I want to disabuse us of the suggestion that America is broke. Frankly, I take great consternation about the scare tactics that has been used to the American people. You can't go home without constituents asking you about the debt ceiling in terms of how it's been framed for the media by way of those who have given the media information. To my Republican friends, stop scaring the American people. Stop using the tactics of intimidation. That's what's going on. Issues of concern about whether a country will survive may be in Greece, may be in Portugal, may be in countries that are enormously in debt without any light at the end of the tunnel. And so these discussions should be around how do we fix a problem and how do we do something that every president has had done for the last 2 decades or 3 decades. The first insult is to suggest that President Barack Obama cannot, in the ordinary course of business, have the debt ceiling raised simply to pay America's bills. Now we're hearing that the most vulnerable will have to be the brunt, potentially, of a deal. And I join with my colleagues in the Progressive Caucus to say that Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security are off of the table. If the Republican leadership can find votes in their own caucus to pass such a deal, let them do it. But the interesting point is that the loss of those resources, meaning Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security, and Social Security has its own trust fund, payroll taxes, and it is interesting to even put that or to suggest that that might be on the table. But the point is that the cutting of those programs is also the loss of jobs. It impacts hospitals. It impacts health clinics. It impacts the staffing. Just as tomorrow ends a 30-year, 40-year love affair with space, temporarily I hope, and you will see massive loss of jobs going from Florida to Texas. That is not a good thing. The government's ability to be able to perform services and to have the FBI and Homeland Security is jobs, constructive jobs, jobs that are needed. So I hope that as discussions go forward, the wisdom of the Progressive Caucus will be adhered to. And that is that the imploding of, if you will, entitlement benefits, some of which are paid for by the actual consumer who ultimately receives them, is also an added dip in the job market and increases the unemployed. So my premise is that we should try to do as they are doing in Greece. And let me suggest that we don't follow, we lead. But the common sense economic stance is to raise revenue and, yes, to make reasonable assessments of where you can cut and to keep doing it for a 10-year program. Mark Zandi, and in his over the period of time commentary, has indicated that the cuts or the balancing of our budget will come over a longer period of time. It does not happen overnight. I don't know if this proposal is supposed to be an overnight proposal. It will not be successful. So I'm asking my colleagues as they go forward to meet with the president that they have the premise of ending the Bush tax cuts, seeking to close loopholes, and there are a myriad of ways that we can raise revenue and be fair to everyone, but that they look very, very, very cautiously. In fact, that's where they should be frightened. That's where the fear should be in touching Medicare, Medicaid, or Social Security for the most vulnerable, but also for those who've invested and are in essence due an IOU. Don't touch Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, and don't cause a massive loss of jobs.
We feel that it is important for us to put up our defense for those programs that the American people have historically depended on and supported. That's the discussion we want to have with the president. That's the discussion we want to have with our own caucus leadership, that it's important for the Democratic Party to stand with the American people on this issue. And if we do that, I think it is to the benefit both of the negotiations and obviously to the benefit of our party. So with that, let me thank you for being here and appreciate your time. And we're available with any questions. Yes.
Congressman, do you feel that the president has sort of abandoned progressives by putting Social Security and other cuts on the table?
You know, credit what credit is due. This is not all about criticism. I think there's sincere effort on the part of the president to try to come up with a mechanism and a deal to raise the ceiling, avoid the default crisis that has been very shrewdly laid before us by the Republican leadership. I think that's a sincere effort, and I don't begrudge him that effort. What I do feel is that there is a huge opinion in our base about protecting these programs. I think it merits listening to. And has he abandoned the progressives on this issue? I don't think it's as simply ideological as that. I think when somebody asked me earlier about consequences, the consequences to that vast constituency and that base up there that supports Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and see that as a first dismantling of a social framework in this country, I think that's where the reaction. So the disappointment will not extend to progressives philosophically. The disappointment is going to extend to a whole bunch of people way beyond this caucus. Thank you. Appreciate it.